Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. On this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And according to information we have, during the previous night the Russians carried out massive missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. The Russians managed to deal significant damage to Ukrainian energy and gas infrastructure. Also, according to information we have, the Russians attacked significant number of concentration of Ukrainian forces, temporary deployment points and the headquarters. Later, more precisely right before we start making this video, the Ukrainian sources summarized everything during the previous night and they published map where we can see the main areas of concentration of Russian fire. When talking about the most western part of Ukraine, according to information we have, in the Ternopil and Ivano-Frankovsky regions, the Russians were trying to attack and to destroy the gas storages of Ukraine that the European countries use for their purposes. So the main purpose of this attack from the Russian side was to damage the European security, energy security. Another attack took place in the Odessa region, and according to information we have, this territory was under attack of Russian drones, and the main purpose of this attack was to destroy as many as possible energy facilities objects. When talking about the eastern part of Ukraine, there are several points that the Russians attacked. The biggest number of attacks took place in Sumy region. Several sources reported that Sumy Oblast was hit by a massive ballistic strike. When talking about this region, obviously the Russians were trying to damage and to destroy as many as possible temporary deployment points of the armed forces of Ukraine and as many as possible Ukrainian headquarters. And obviously the main purpose of this attack was to break the Ukrainian resistance and to improve Russian positions along the line of combat contact. When talking about Poltava and Kharkivsky regions, the Russians tried to attack energy facilities and gas transportation stations. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about Sumy. Once again, during the previous night, the Russians carried out massive missile strike all over the entire region with the purpose to destroy as many as possible Ukrainian temporary deployment points and to reduce Ukrainian resistance possibilities before the final days, before the another wave of Russian offensive operation. Now let's discuss this in details. According to information we have and according to information that we start receiving from pro-Ukrainian sources, the logistics situation in Kursk is rapidly deteriorating and is already critical. We start receiving reports of this type from significant number of pro-Ukrainian sources. Furthermore, during the previous night we got a lot of proofs that confirm this information. In this video we can see how the Russians destroyed another vehicle that was moving from the city of Sudzha in the direction of Sumy with FPV drone. Another video took place a little bit further in the southeastern direction. Another abandoned Ukrainian vehicle somewhere in the middle of the road was destroyed as a result of Russian FPV drone attack. So we see that currently nothing can escape the Sudzha direction, which means that Ukrainians are in a very big trouble. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources Deep State published a very interesting map update, and according to them, the Russians during the previous 12 hours managed to improve their position significantly, to break through the Ukrainian defense belt to the west of Krylovka and to get as close as possible to the one of the supply roads. So for example, this is the situation that you can see in front of your screens, is the situation by the beginning of the 7th, and this is the situation by the end of the 6th of March. So as you can see, the differences are significant between two dates. It's very even difficult to understand how exactly the Russians managed to break through, but before this breakthrough, the Russians, yes, they published a lot of videos of how they were bombing and attacking the main positions of the armed forces of Ukraine with a significant number of FAB 3000 and FAB 1500. So basically the Russians reduced till ruins the Ukrainian positions on the way of their attack. And after all these things, after this breakthrough, after massive missile strike, after establishing complete control over the main supply roads, the Russian sources published the video from the settlement by the name of Staraya Sorochina. In this video we can see how a Russian soldier raised the Russian flag above the building in the most northern part of the settlement. Based on this video we have adjusted the northern part of the settlement by the name of Staraya Sorochina. This is the situation by the end of the 6th of March, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of March. We see that Ukrainians lost any possibilities to show more or less a strong resistance to the armored force of Russian Federation. Most likely during the next several days the Russians will be able to improve their positions significantly. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk direction, where according to information we have, the Russians continue their offensive operation, and during the previous 24 hours the Russians were trying to move in the direction of Kutkovka, and the Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions along the river of Oskol in the direction of Krasnaya Persha. So now we see that the Russians most likely managed to concentrate a critical mass on this bank of the river, and now the Russians are trying to improve their positions significantly. Furthermore, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the Boguslavka direction. Today we got video how the Russians were trying to assault the village of Zagryzovo. Based on this video, we have adjusted several square kilometers in Russian favor along the river of Oskol. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Chasiv directions, because probably the most important updates are coming from the city of Chasiv, where the Russians are about to finish the battle for the city. For example, this is the map that you can see in front of your screens. This is the map by the end of the 6th of March, and this morning we got report that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt, to cross the railways and to encircle the Ukrainians that are currently located in the central part. As you can see, the Russians began their offensive operation, their major offensive operation, during the night period of time. Just in this video we can calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, up to 12 vehicles or even more that were involved in this offensive operation. The Russians in this video are crossing the railways and entering the southwestern part of the settlement. We see no resistance from the Ukrainian side. Maybe this is the consequences of, let's say, complete absence of intelligence information that the Ukrainians used to have from the United States of America. Anyway, the Russians attacked the Ukrainian positions. Of course, several vehicles and infantry fighting vehicles and tanks of the armored force of Russian Federation were damaged. But despite the losses, the Russians managed to break through and to enter the most southern part of the western part of the city of Chasiv. Several geolocations were located exactly in these several episode were geolocated exactly in this part. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Obviously, this is the significant breakthrough of the armored force of Russian Federation, and I believe that we can start counting days before the entire city of Chasiv falls. During the previous several days, the Russians were FPV droning the Ukrainians to the north with the purpose to secure the flank, and after the Russians dealt significant damage to the Ukrainians and secured the flank, they began this offensive. Now let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now let's move further in the direction of Toretsk, where we can still see very heavy clashes and battles between the Russians and the Ukrainians. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to restore control over the citadel completely. The building was recaptured by the Russians. The Ukrainians were forced to fall back. Furthermore, we got another very important video from the settlement of Sherbenivka. In this video, we can see lots of episodes of how the Ukrainians were FPV droning the Russians in this area. One of the episodes of Ukrainian FPV drone attack took place exactly in this point. As for now, it's very difficult to understand how we should have colored the map, but as for now, we decided to show additional progress on the ground by the Russians along the river of Kryvyi Torets as far as possible to the north, probably with the purpose to cut this part of the settlement from supply and support. Now let's move further. As for the Pokrovsk direction, very heavy clashes continues around the settlement of Pokrovsk along this endless number of villages. First, let's discuss the situation in Lysovka. Today, the Ukrainian sources published the video how they were FPV droning the Russians exactly in this point. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map and we have colored this part of the settlement in under complete control of the armored force of Russian Federation. As you can see, the rest of the settlement of Lysovka is considered by us as a contested area. Furthermore, very heavy clashes continues in the territory of Shevchenka, and very heavy clashes continues on the territory of the settlement of Peshchane. The Ukrainians are not counting losses. They are sending more and more troopers and forces with the purpose to restore control over both settlements, with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back as far as possible. So the situation here is very critical, but the Russians are trying to stabilize the situation. They they tried to settle this direction to take everything under control, and for these purposes the Russians are not counting arms and weapons. As for the South Donetsk direction, during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, we got the most important updates from the area of Rozliv. The Ukrainian sources published the video how they were repelling another Russian offensive operation through the fields in the direction of the settlement by the name of Bogatyr. So we see that after a very long operational pause, the Russians resumed their attempts to take this territory under complete and strong control. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.